I am Jack, 28 years old, and my father slammed my head through the drywall because I wouldn't drive his golden child to the mall in the rain. Before I tell you about how I ended up owning their house while they sit in a jail cell, let me know where you guys are watching from in the comments. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Started on a Tuesday morning. The air in the house was heavy, the kind of humidity that sticks to your skin and makes everything feel suffocating. I was standing in the laundry room, carefully ironing my only good white shirt. This shirt was my armor. In exactly 2 hours, I had an interview at Westfield Marketing. It was the biggest opportunity of my life, a chance to finally get a salary that could pull me out of the financial hole I'd been stuck in since I turned 18. I treated that shirt like it was made of gold. I pressed the collar, making sure it was crisp. I checked the cuffs. I was nervous. My hands were shaking a little, not just from the caffeine, but from the sheer pressure of needing this to work. I needed to get out of this house. Then the door banged open. It wasn't a normal entrance. In my house, nobody just walked in. They announced their presence. Austin, my 20-year-old brother, strolled in with a bowl of cereal in one hand and his phone in the other. He didn't even look at me. He just leaned against the washing machine, chewing loudly. "Hey," he said, mouth full. "I need a ride." I didn't look up from the ironing board. "I'm busy, Austin. I have that interview at 10. "Yeah, I know. But Mom said you could drop me at the mall on your way. I'm meeting the guys." I stopped ironing and looked at him. Austin was wearing brand new sneakers that cost more than my entire wardrobe. On the kitchen counter, just 10 feet away, lay the key fob to his Porsche 911. A bright red, 2024 model that my parents had leased for him because he needed reliable transportation for college. A college I suspected he wasn't even attending half the time. "You have a car," I said, pointing the iron toward the kitchen. "You have a Porsche. Why do you need a ride?" Austin rolled his eyes, a gesture he had perfected over 2 decades of getting exactly what he wanted. "It looks like it's gonna rain, Jack. I just got it detailed. I'm not taking it out in the rain. Plus, the traffic is terrible. Just drive me in your beater. It's already a piece of junk, so who cares if it gets wet?" My beater was a 15-year-old sedan with a cracked windshield and no air conditioning. I bought it with money I made scrubbing dishes at a diner. "No," I said, going back to the collar. "I'm not driving 40 minutes out of my way. I need to be early. This interview matters." Austin scoffed. He set his cereal bowl down on top of the dryer, dangerously close to my clean laundry. "It's just some marketing thing. You're gonna choke anyway. Just drive me." I said, "No, Austin. Take an Uber if you don't want to drive." That was the trigger. Austin wasn't used to the word no. He grabbed his keys off the counter and threw them hard onto the ironing board. They skidded and hit my hand. "Don't be a jerk, Jack." "Mom!" he yelled, his voice cracking with that entitled whine I knew so well. "Mom!" Jack's being a D***CK. I unplugged the iron. I was done. I was gonna grab my jacket and leave early. I didn't want a confrontation. I just wanted to escape. But escape wasn't allowed. Not in this house. My father, Frank, walked into the room. He was a big man, broad-shouldered, with a face that had turned permanently red from years of high blood pressure and low patience. He looked at Austin, who was putting on his best victim face, and then he looked at me. "What is the problem now?" Frank asked, his voice low and dangerous. "I need to go to the mall," Austin said, pointing a finger at me. "Jack refuses to take me. He says he's too busy, and he insulted my car." Frank turned his full attention to me. Felt like a spotlight interrogation. "Is this true? You won't help your brother?" "I have the interview, Dad," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "The one I told you about all week. At Westfield. I have to leave now to beat the traffic." Frank laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. "That little job? You think that's more important than family? Your brother needs to be somewhere. You take him." "I can't," I insisted, grabbing my shirt. "He has a car. A brand new car. He can drive himself." Frank took a step closer. He invaded my personal space, smelling of stale coffee and aggression. "His car is an investment. We don't run it into the ground like you do with your garbage heap. You are going to drive him, and you are going to do it now. No. The word hung in the air. I had never defied a direct order like that before. Usually I folded. Usually I just took the abuse to keep the peace. But today was different. Today I felt like my future was on the line. Frank's face turned a shade of purple I'd rarely seen. "Excuse me?" I said. "No," I repeated, clutching my shirt against my chest. "I am not his chauffeur. I am not his servant. I am going to my interview." I tried to step around him. That was my mistake. Frank's hand shot out and grabbed my shoulder. His grip was like a vice. He spun me around with a force that knocked the wind out of me. "You ungrateful little parasite," he spat. "After everything we provide for you? A roof over your head? Food. I pay rent." I yelled back. "I pay you $800 a month for a room the size of a closet. You pay what I tell you to pay." Frank roared. He shoved me. I stumbled back, hitting the washing machine. The iron fell off the board with a loud clang. "Frank, stop." My mother, Martha, appeared in the doorway, but she didn't move to help me. She just stood there, wringing her hands, looking worried about the noise. Not her son. "The neighbors will hear." "Let them hear," Frank screamed. He grabbed me by the lapels of my undershirt. "You think you're better than us? You think you're too good to help your brother? He's 20 years old." I shouted right in his face. "Let him grow up." Frank snapped. He didn't just shove me this time. He grabbed a handful of my hair and the fabric of my shirt and he threw me. He literally threw me across the small room. My back hit the wall first, but my head followed a split second later. Crack. The sound was sickening. It wasn't just the sound of my skull hitting the drywall. It was the sound of the drywall giving way. My head punched a dent into the plaster. Stars exploded in my vision. White light blinded me for a second, and my knees buckled. I slid down the wall, gasping for air. I touched my lip. It was wet. I pulled my hand away and saw bright red blood. I had bitten through my lip when I hit the wall. The room went dead silent. I looked up. I was dizzy. The room was spinning slightly. Austin was smirking. He actually looked amused. Mom was covering her mouth, her eyes wide, but she still didn't move toward me. She looked at the hole in the wall and whispered, "Frank, the wall." She cared about the wall. Frank stood over me, his chest heaving. He didn't look sorry. He looked justified. He pointed a shaking finger at my face. "You listen to me," he hissed, his voice trembling with rage. "You do what you are told. Austin has potential. Austin is going places. You are nothing." He leaned down, his face inches from mine. I could see the veins pulsing in his neck. "His future matters," Frank said, delivering each word like a punch. "Yours never did." Something inside me broke. It wasn't a bone. It was the last tether holding me to these people. For 28 years, I had hoped that if I worked hard enough, if I was good enough, they would love me. If I got the grades, if I paid the rent, if I fixed the house, they would see me. But in that moment, bleeding on the laundry room floor, looking at my father's hate-filled eyes, I realized the truth. I was never their son. I was their appliance. I was a tool to be used until it broke and then discarded. I didn't say a word. I used the washing machine to pull myself up. My legs felt heavy, like lead. "Where do you think you're going?" Frank barked. "Get your keys. Austin is waiting." I looked at him. I looked at my mother, who couldn't even meet my eyes. She was looking at the floor, probably already calculating how much it would cost to fix the drywall. I looked at Austin, who was checking his watch, bored. "No," I whispered. I grabbed my iron shirt from where it had fallen. It had a smudge of dirt on the sleeve now, but I didn't care. I grabbed my jacket. "If you walk out that door," Frank threatened, stepping between me and the exit, "don't you come back. You hear me? You're done." I looked at the man who had raised me. I wiped the blood from my lip with the back of my hand. "Okay," I said. Frank looked surprised. He expected me to beg. He expected me to apologize. I walked past him. He made a move to grab me again, but I flinched, raising my arm in defense. He stopped, seeing the fear but also the absolute resolution in my eyes. I walked out the back door. The rain had started. It was pouring. "You'll be back," Austin yelled after me. "You're broke. You can't survive without us." I didn't turn around. I walked into the rain, the water mixing with the blood on my chin. I was throbbing with pain. I was homeless, and I had 45 minutes to get to the most important interview of my life. But for the first time in 28 years, I was free. The rain was torrential. Within seconds, I was soaked to the bone. I ran to my car, fumbling for my keys, my hands shaking so badly I dropped them twice in the mud. I jumped into the driver's seat of my beat-up sedan and turned the key. Click, click, whir. Nothing. I tried again. Click, click. My stomach dropped through the floor. No, not now. Please God, not now. I slammed my hands against the steering wheel. I looked back at the house. I could see the silhouette of my father watching from the window. I knew he was smiling. I knew, with a sick certainty, that this wasn't a coincidence. But I couldn't prove it, and I didn't have time to fix it. I had to run. The nearest train station was 1.5 miles away. I checked my phone. If I ran, I could make the 9:15 train. That would get me downtown by 9:50. It was cutting it close, dangerously close, but it was my only shot. I grabbed my garment bag, holding it tight against my chest to protect the shirt, and I started running. Every step sent a jolt of pain through my skull. My head was pounding where it had hit the wall. My lip was swelling up fast. I could taste the metallic tang of blood and rain. As I ran past the manicured lawns of my neighborhood, fighting the wind, the memories started flooding in. It was like the physical pain unlocked the vault of everything I had suppressed. I remembered my 18th birthday. I had come home from school excited. Most kids got a party or maybe a little cash. I just wanted a dinner together. I walked in and saw luggage in the hallway. My parents were packing. "Where are we going?" I had asked. "We." Martha had laughed, not unkindly, but dismissively. "Your father and I are taking Austin to Europe for 2 weeks. It's an educational trip. He needs to see the history." Austin was 10 at the time. "What about me?" I asked. "It's my birthday." "Oh, Jack," my mother sighed. "You're an adult now. You can take care of yourself. There's lasagna in the freezer." They left that night. I spent my 18th birthday eating frozen lasagna alone, watching TV. 2 days later, a bill arrived for the educational trip. They had used my name to sign for a package, but I didn't think much of it then. I kept running, my breath coming in ragged gasps. My dress shoes were splashing through puddles, ruining the leather, but I kept moving. Another memory hit me, the dentist. When I was 16, I needed braces. My teeth were crooked, causing me jaw pain. The dentist told my parents it was medically necessary. "We can't afford it," Frank had said flatly. "Money is tight right now, Jack. You'll just have to live with it." 3 weeks later, 3 weeks, a delivery truck pulled up. Frank had bought a vintage jukebox for the basement man cave. Cost $4,000. He spent the entire weekend polishing it, telling me how it was an investment. "Money is tight," I whispered to myself as I sprinted toward the station. The lie burned hotter than the bruise on my face. I reached the station just as the train was pulling in. I didn't have a ticket. I jumped the turnstile. I didn't care. If I got arrested, fine. But I wasn't missing this interview. I collapsed into a seat in the back of the car. I was dripping wet. People moved away from me. I caught my reflection in the dark window of the train tunnel. I looked deranged. My hair was plastered to my forehead. My lip was swollen to twice its size, and there was a dark bruise forming on my cheekbone. I opened the garment bag. Miraculously, the shirt was dry. I changed right there in the train car. I didn't care who was watching. I peeled off my soaked t-shirt and put on the white dress shirt. Felt clean. Felt like a second chance. I tied my tie with trembling fingers. As the train rattled toward the city, I thought about the college fund. That was the biggest lie of them all. For years, they told me they were saving for us. "Work hard, Jack, and the fund will take care of tuition." I worked hard. I got a 3.8 GPA. I got into a decent state university. When the acceptance letter came, I put it on the dinner table, beaming. Frank didn't even look up from his newspaper. That's nice. How are you paying for it? The fund, I said. The college fund. Frank laughed. There is no fund for you, Jack. That money is for Austin. He has specific needs. He's going to private school. You're smart. You can figure out loans. I ended up working 30 hours a week while taking full-time classes. I graduated with debt, exhausted, while Austin flunked out of 3 different private boarding schools, each one costing more than my entire degree. The train screeched to a halt. Downtown, the conductor announced. I checked my phone. 9:48 a.m. I had 12 minutes. I ran out of the station and up the stairs to street level. The rain had stopped, leaving the city slick and gray. The Westfield building was a glass tower that seemed to pierce the sky. It looked intimidating. It looked like a fortress I wasn't allowed to enter. I walked into the lobby. The security guard gave me a look. Wet hair, bruised face, impeccable shirt. I'm here to see Elena Vance, I told the receptionist. Jack Miller. I have at 10 o'clock. Take the elevator to the 40th floor, she said, her eyes lingering on my lip. Do you need a tissue? I'm fine, I said. I went to the bathroom on the 40th floor. I had 3 minutes. I dried my hair under the hand dryer. I washed the dried blood off my chin. I looked at myself in the mirror. I looked like a fighter who had just gone 12 rounds. You can do this, I told the reflection. You are not what they say you are. But a voice in the back of my head, Frank's voice, whispered, You're nothing. You're just a servant. I clenched my fists. I wasn't going back. Even if I didn't get this job, I was sleeping on a park bench tonight. I would never step foot in that house again. I would never drive Austin anywhere. I would never let Frank put his hands on me again. I walked out of the bathroom and into the waiting area. Jack Miller. I turned. A woman was standing there. She was in her 50s, elegant, wearing a sharp gray suit that screamed authority. This was Elena Vance, the CEO. I had expected a hiring manager, but apparently, she took a hands-on approach. She looked at my resume in her hand, then she looked up at me. Her eyes widened slightly. She saw the bruise. She saw the swelling. She saw the damp hair. For a second, I thought she was going to tell me to leave. I thought she was going to say I looked unprofessional, that I brought drama. Instead, she did something I didn't expect. She didn't look away. She stepped closer, her expression shifting from assessment to something softer. Something like recognition. Mr. Miller, she said, her voice calm. You're right on time. I apologize for my appearance, I said quickly, reciting the line I had practiced in the elevator. I had an unexpected situation this morning. Elena looked at my lip, then at my eyes. It looks like you went through hell to get here, Jack. Something like that, I admitted. She held the door open. Well, don't just stand there. Come in. I want to hear about the man who walks through hell and still shows up 3 minutes early. I walked into her office, and for the first time that day I breathed. Elena's office was corner-facing, with a view that swallowed the entire city. It was quiet, the kind of expensive quiet you only find in places where serious decisions are made. Sit, she said, pointing to a leather chair. I sat. I tried to sit straight, to hide the fact that my ribs were throbbing. Elena sat behind her desk, folded her hands, and looked at me. I've read your resume, Jack. You have good numbers, consistent, reliable, but your cover letter, it was generic. It sounded like you were trying to disappear. I swallowed. I was trying to be professional. Professional is boring, she said. She leaned forward. Tell me about the bruise. I froze. I fell. It was clumsy. Elena raised an eyebrow. Jack. I grew up with 3 brothers in a neighborhood where the police didn't like to come. I know what a fall looks like, and I know what a right hook looks like. That, she pointed to my cheek, was a wall or a door frame, and someone put you there. I looked down at my hands. I couldn't lie to her. There was something about her gaze. piercing but not judgmental, that stripped away my defenses. "My father," I said quietly. "He didn't want me to come here today. He wanted me to drive my brother to the mall." Elena didn't gasp. She didn't offer pity. She just nodded slowly. "And you came anyway." "I had to." "Why?" "Because—" I looked up, meeting her eyes. "If I didn't come today, I was never going to leave. He told me my future didn't matter. He said it never did. I'm here to prove him wrong." Elena stared at me for a long moment. Then, a small smile touched her lips. "Resilience. That's a skill I can't teach. I can teach you marketing strategy, Jack. I can teach you how to analyze data. I can't teach you how to take a hit and keep moving forward." She opened a drawer and pulled out a file. "The job is yours. Junior Marketing Analyst. Starting salary is $65,000 a year, full benefits." My jaw dropped. That was double what I was making at my current dead-end data entry job. "Really? Just like that? Just like that? Can you start Monday?" "Yes," I said, my voice choking up. "Yes, absolutely." "Good." She reached into her purse and pulled out a checkbook. "Now, this is unorthodox, and HR will probably kill me, but you look like you need to move out today." She wrote a check and slid it across the desk. It was for $2,000. "An advance on your first month," she said. "Get a hotel. Get some ice for that face. And buy a new suit." I took the check. My hands were shaking again. "Thank you. You have no idea what this means." "I think I do," she said softly. "Now go. Get out of here before the adrenaline wears off and you pass out." I left the building walking on air. I had a job. I had money. I had a future. But I had one loose end. My clothes. My laptop. The few possessions I actually owned were still in that house. I needed to go back one last time. I cashed the check at a bank downstairs, depositing most of it but keeping some cash. I took a cab back to the suburbs. It was early afternoon now. The rain had stopped. I asked the cab driver to wait down the street. I didn't want to alert them. I crept up to the house. Austin's Porsche was gone. He must have taken it eventually. My dad's truck was gone too. Perfect. The house was empty. I let myself in with my key. The silence was eerie. The ironing board was still knocked over in the laundry room. The hole in the wall was staring at me. A violent reminder of the morning. I ran up to my room. I grabbed my duffel bag and started throwing everything in. Clothes, my laptop, my chargers, my birth certificate from the desk drawer. I worked fast, my heart hammering against my ribs. I zipped the bag shut and turned to leave. Leaving so soon? My heart stopped. I spun around. Frank was standing in the doorway of my bedroom. He wasn't at work. He was leaning against the frame, holding a beer. It was 2 p.m. "I thought you were gone," I stammered, gripping the bag. "I took the afternoon off," he said calmly, "to calm my nerves. You upset your mother terribly, Jack." "I'm moving out," I said, trying to sound stronger than I felt. "I got the job." Frank laughed. "You got the job? Looking like that? Who hired you? A circus?" "I got the job," I repeated. "And I'm leaving." "Go ahead," Frank shrugged. "You won't last a week. You need us." "I don't need you," I said. "I never did. I just thought I did." I tried to push past him, but he blocked the way again. But this time he didn't grab me. He just smiled. It was a cruel, knowing smile. "You know," he said conversationally, "I really thought you were going to miss that interview today, like the last one." I froze. 6 months ago, I had lined up an interview for a logistics manager position. It would have been a great stepping stone. But the morning of the interview, my car wouldn't start. The battery was dead. The spark plugs were fouled. By the time I fixed it, I had missed the appointment. "What do you mean?" I asked slowly. Frank took a sip of his beer. "You have such bad luck with cars, Jack. First the spark plugs back in December. Then the starter today. It's almost like someone doesn't want you to leave." The realization hit me like a bucket of ice water. "You," I whispered. "You sabotaged my car." Frank winked. "I just pulled a few wires. Takes 2 seconds. You see, Jack, we need you here. Who else is going to mow the lawn? Who else is going to pay rent? Austin certainly isn't going to do it. I stared at him. This wasn't just bad parenting. This was evil. He had actively destroyed my opportunities to keep me as a servant in his house. You're sick, I said. I'm pragmatic, Frank replied. Now put the bag down. Go make me a sandwich. And maybe, if you apologize to your brother when he gets home, we can forget this happened. For a second, the old fear rose up, the conditioning to obey. But then I touched the check in my pocket. I thought of Elena Vance. No, I said. I didn't try to squeeze past him. I just barreled through. I used my shoulder and shoved him. Frank, surprised and a little tipsy, stumbled back. Hey! He yelled. I ran down the stairs. You walk out that door and you're dead to me, he screamed from the landing. I'll cut you off. You'll have nothing. I burst out the front door and ran down the street to the waiting cab. I threw my bag in the back seat and jumped in. Drive! I yelled to the driver. Just drive. As the cab pulled away, I looked back one last time. Frank was standing on the porch, his face red with rage, crushing the beer can in his hand. I didn't feel sad. I felt light. The bridge wasn't just burned. I had nuked it, and I was never looking back. For the first few weeks, I felt invincible. I crashed on the couch of my college buddy, Sam. Sam was a great guy, a software engineer who didn't ask questions and just gave me a key. Stay as long as you need, man, he said. Your dad sounds like a nightmare. Work was amazing. Elena was a tough mentor, but she was fair. I soaked up everything she taught me. I was the first one in the office and the last one to leave. I even bought a decent used car, a reliable Honda, with my first paycheck. Everything was going according to plan. I was finally building the life I deserved. Then, about 2 months in, I decided it was time to get my own place. I didn't want to burden Sam forever. Elena's brother, Marcus, owned a few apartment buildings in the city. Jack, I've got a great one-bedroom coming up, Marcus told me over lunch. It's in a nice area, reasonable rent. Since Elena vouches for you, I'll fast-track the application. I just need to run a standard credit check. Sure, I said, confident. I've always paid my bills on time. And I had. My phone bill, my car insurance, my student loan payments. I never missed a deadline. I was meticulous about money because I had so little of it. The next day, Marcus called me into his office. He looked uncomfortable. He wouldn't meet my eyes. Jack, sit down. What's up? I asked, feeling a knot form in my stomach. Did I get the apartment? Marcus slid a piece of paper across the desk. Jack, I can't rent to you. I can't even legally approve this application. I looked at the paper. It was my credit report. At the top, in big, bold red numbers, was my credit score, 420. That's impossible, I said, laughing nervously. That has to be a mistake. I pay everything on time. My student loans are current. It's not your student loans, Marcus said gently. It's the other debt. What other debt? Jack, you have over $200,000 in outstanding debt. Most of it is in collections. There are credit cards, personal loans, lines of credit. All maxed out, all defaulted. The room started to spin. 200,000? Marcus, I drive a Honda and own 3 suits. I don't have that kind of money. You need to go to the bank, Marcus said. You need to pull the full report. This looks bad. This looks like fraud. I left his office in a daze. I went straight to the main branch of my bank. I sat down with a loan officer, a kind woman named Sarah, and asked for a full investigation. It took her an hour to print everything out. When she came back, she was carrying a stack of paper an inch thick. Mr. Miller, she said, these accounts were opened over a period of 4 years. The first one was opened just after your 18th birthday. My 18th birthday, the day my parents went to Europe. I started flipping through the pages. My hands were trembling so hard I almost ripped the paper. Visa Black Card. Limit, $20,000. Status, charged off. Personal loan, $50,000. Defaulted. Auto loan, $85,000. Collateral? None. I looked at the addresses on the accounts. They were all registered to my parents' address. The billing statements were sent there. The phone number listed was my father's cell phone. I looked at the transaction history. It was a catalog of their luxury. The Ritz-Carlton, Paris. That was the trip they took without me. Porsche Financial Services. Austin's car lease payments. Tuition. St. Jude's Private Academy. Austin's school. Rolex jeweler. DraftKings online gambling. They hadn't just stolen my identity. They had cannibalized my future to fund their present. Every time Frank told me, "We can't afford it," he was right, because he was busy spending my credit limit on himself. "This isn't me?" I whispered, feeling the bile rise in my throat. "I didn't sign for any of this." "The signatures look electronic," Sarah said, pointing to a line. "Did anyone else have access to your social security number?" "My parents," I said. "They kept my documents in a safe. They said it was for safekeeping." I felt sick, physically sick. I remembered the years of eating ramen noodles, of walking to work because I couldn't afford gas, of being called useless and broke by the very people who were wearing watches bought in my name. "What do I do?" I asked Sarah. "I can't pay this. I'll be bankrupt for the rest of my life." "You have two choices," Sarah said seriously. "You can declare bankruptcy, which will ruin your credit for 7 years, and you still might be liable for some of it. Or what? Or you file a police report for identity theft. You claim fraud. But Jack, if you do that, the bank will go after the people who did this. It's a felony. A serious one." She looked at me. "You'd be sending the police to your parents' door." I sat there for a long moment. I thought about the wall. I thought about the blood on my lip. I thought about his future matters, yours never did. They had set me up to fail. They had saddled me with debt I couldn't pay so that I would never be able to leave. So I would always be trapped there, serving them while they lived like kings on my dime. It wasn't just theft. It was slavery. I looked at Sarah. My eyes were dry. The sadness was gone, replaced by a cold, hard rage. "Give me the forms," I said. "I want to file charges." But I knew a police report wasn't enough. I needed a lawyer. I needed a shark. I called Elena. I told her everything. She listened in silence, and when I finished, she said one name. "Sarah Gold." "Who is she?" "She's the nastiest, most aggressive financial litigation attorney in the city," Elena said. "She eats fraudsters for breakfast. I'll call her. You meet us at her office in an hour." That afternoon, I sat in a glass-walled conference room with Sarah Gold. She was a small woman with sharp glasses and a smile that looked like a warning label. She reviewed the documents, her eyes scanning the pages like a Terminator. "This is textbook," she said. "Narcissistic financial abuse. They didn't just want the money, Jack. They wanted control. They wanted to make sure you could never fly away." She tapped the page with the $85,000 auto loan. "This one is interesting," she said. 85 grand. No collateral. That's a high-interest unsecured loan. Usually, you only take these out if you're desperate. If you need cash fast and you don't want anyone asking questions. "Why would they be desperate?" I asked. "They have my income. Their income, the house?" "I don't know," Sarah said. "But we're going to find out. I'm going to hire a forensic accountant. And then we're going to invite your parents to a little meeting." "A meeting? Before we go to the cops, we confront them." Sarah smiled, and it was terrifying. "We get them to admit it on tape. We get the leverage. And then we drop the hammer." I nodded. "Let's do it." I was done being the victim. It was time to become the hunter. The meeting was set for a Friday afternoon at Sarah Gold's office. My parents didn't know I had a lawyer. I had sent them a text, simply saying, "I found out about the loans. We need to talk. If you don't come to this address, I'm going to the police." I knew they would come, not because they were sorry, but because they were cowards. They would come to bully me back into submission. I sat at the head of the long mahogany table. Sarah Gold sat to my right, looking bored, tapping a pen against a notepad. Elena stood by the window, silently supporting me. At 2 p.m., the door opened. Frank walked in first. He was wearing a suit that was a little too tight, trying to look imposing. Martha followed, clutching a designer handbag that I now knew I had probably paid for. And trailing behind them was Austin. Austin looked annoyed. He was wearing sunglasses indoors. "This is ridiculous," Frank announced, not even looking at the lawyer. He glared straight at me. "Dragging us into the city? Who do you think you are?" "Sit down," I said. Frank sneered. "Don't you give me orders. You ungrateful little—" "Mr. Miller." Sarah Gold's voice cut through the air like a whip. "I suggest you take a seat before I call the district attorney and have you arrested for grand larceny right now." Frank froze. He looked at Sarah, then at the stack of files on the table. The color drained from his face slightly. He sat. Martha and Austin sat next to him. "Who is this?" Martha asked, her voice trembling. "My lawyer," I said. Frank scoffed, regaining some bravado. "Lawyer? You can't afford a lawyer, Jack. You can't even afford rent." "Actually," Sarah said, opening a file, "Jack can afford quite a lot. Or at least his credit rating could before you destroyed it. We have the records, Frank. The credit cards, the loans, the identity theft. It totals $212,000. That's family money," Frank blustered. "We managed his finances. He agreed to it." "I never agreed to anything," I said calmly. "I never signed a single paper." "We raised you," Martha cried out, playing her favorite card. "We put food on the table. This is how you repay us? Over money? We're family." "Family doesn't steal your identity," I said. "Family doesn't smash your head into a wall." Austin took off his sunglasses. "Look, bro, can we hurry this up? I have plans." I looked at my brother, the golden child, the one who got everything. "Plans?" I asked. "Like driving your Porsche?" "Oh wait, you don't drive the Porsche, do you, Austin? You haven't driven in 2 years." Sarah Gold leaned forward. This was the moment. The investigator had found something. Something big. "Let's talk about the $85,000 loan," Sarah said. "Taken out 2 years ago. Urgent cash withdrawal. Tell me, Frank, why did you need 85 grand in cash on a Sunday night?" Frank went pale. "That's personal business." "It's not personal," Sarah said, "because I have the police report from that night. A hit and run. A rented Lamborghini crashed into a minivan on Route 9. The driver fled the scene. The rental was under a fake name, but the witness described a young man, about 20 years old." She looked at Austin. Austin was shaking. "You paid off the victim," Sarah said. "You didn't want Austin to go to jail for drunk driving and leaving the scene of an accident. So you paid the family off to drop the charges and not identify the driver. And you used Jack's credit to get the cash." I felt the blood rush to my ears. I stared at my father. "You ruined my life? To cover up his crime?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "He could have killed someone. And you paid for his freedom with my future." "He has a future," Frank shouted, slamming his hand on the table. "He's special. One mistake shouldn't ruin his life. You're just you. You can handle the debt. You're used to struggling. Austin isn't built for that." There it was. The naked, ugly truth. They sacrificed me because they thought I was worthless. They saved him because they thought he was precious. "He's not special, Dad," I said, standing up. "He's a criminal. And you're an accomplice. You listen to me." Frank stood up too, his face purple again. "You are going to walk away from this. You are going to sign a paper saying these were authorized family loans. Or so help me God, I will." "You will what?" I interrupted. "Throw me against a wall? Not this time." I pressed a button on the speakerphone. "Officer? Did you get all that?" A voice crackled from the speaker. "We got it all, Mr. Miller. Officers are on their way up." Frank's eyes bulged. You wired the room?" "This is a law office," Sarah smiled. "Everything is recorded. And you just confessed to fraud, bribery, and perverting the course of justice. Martha started screaming. Jack, no, he's your father. Austin is your brother. You can't send them to jail. You did this? I said, looking at my mother. You watched him beat me. You watched him steal from me. And you did nothing. You enjoyed the trips. You enjoyed the jewelry. You're just as guilty. Austin stood up to run, but the door opened. 2 uniformed officers stepped in. Sit down, the officer ordered. Frank slumped into his chair. He looked small. For the first time in my life, the giant who had terrified me was just a pathetic, scared old man. I looked at them, the 3 people who were supposed to love me most in the world, and I felt nothing. No love, no hate, just a clean, sharp severance. This is the moment that changes everything, I said to them. When I finally take back control of my life. Author's note: if you are enjoying this story of justice, please like the video and comment justice for Jack below. It helps more people find this story and lets me know you're with me. Jack, please, Frank whispered. We'll pay you back. We'll sell the house. You won't be selling the house, Sarah Gold said, closing her folder. Because the bank is going to seize it, along with everything else you own. The officers moved in with handcuffs. Frank Miller, you are under arrest. I turned my back on them. I walked over to the window where Elena was standing. You okay? She asked. I watched the city traffic below. I will be. The fallout was fast and brutal. It was like watching a house of cards get hit by a leaf blower. Because I had filed the police report and we had the taped confession. The district attorney didn't hesitate. They raided my parents' house the next morning. I wasn't there, but my old neighbor, Mrs. Higgins, told me everything. She said it was the most excitement the street had seen in 40 years. Police cruisers blocked the driveway. They brought out boxes of documents. They towed the Porsche. They towed Frank's truck. They even seized the furniture that had been bought with the illicit credit cards. Mrs. Higgins said Austin was crying on the front lawn as they put him in the squad car. The tough guy, the golden boy who thought he was too good to drive in the rain, was sobbing for his mommy. But the biggest shock came a few days later. Sarah called me with an update. Jack, you're not going to believe this. Try me, I said. I was at work, actually focusing on a marketing campaign for the first time in weeks. We dug into Austin's records. You know how your parents said the money was for his tuition? St. Jude's Academy? Yeah. Austin was expelled 2 years ago, freshman year. He got caught selling Adderall on campus. He hasn't attended a single class since 2023. I almost dropped the phone. What? But he leaves the house every day. He talks about his professors. He's been faking it, Sarah said. He's been taking the tuition money your parents borrowed from you and spending it on online gambling, bottle service at clubs, and apparently renting Lamborghinis to race. I laughed. Couldn't help it. It was a dark, hysterical laugh. My parents had destroyed my life, ruined their own lives, and committed multiple felonies. For a lie. Their golden child was a dropout drug dealer who had played them for fools. Frank found out during his interrogation. The detective told me Frank actually vomited when he heard Austin hadn't been to school in 2 years. The realization that his investment was a fraud broke him more than the handcuffs did. The legal process moved swiftly. Because the amount was over $200,000 and involved an elderly victim, my identity theft was technically compounded because they also stole from my grandmother's estate, which we found out later. The charges were severe. Frank was facing 10 to 15 years for grand larceny, fraud, and bribery. Martha was facing 5 to 8 as an accomplice. Austin was looking at charges for the hit and run, which was reopened, fraud, and obstruction of justice. And then came the assets. The bank foreclosed on everything. The house, my childhood home, the scene of all my nightmares, was put up for auction to pay off the debts. It was a beautiful house, objectively. For bedrooms, colonial style, big oak tree in the front. But it was tainted. About 6 months after the arrest, I was sitting in Elena's office. I had been promoted. I was now a senior analyst. My credit score was slowly being repaired as the fraud charges cleared the bad debts from my record. Jack, Elena said, I heard the auction for the Miller property is next week. Yeah, I said. I hope they bulldoze it. Or, Elena said, tapping a pen on her desk, you could flip it. I looked at her. What? Real estate market is hot, she said. The bank just wants to recoup the losses. It's going to go for cheap. You know the house. You know what needs fixing. Mostly the drywall your dad broke. You buy it, you gut it, you remodel it, you sell it. You turn your trauma into profit. I don't have the capital, I said. I do, Elena smiled. I'll put up the money. You manage the renovation. We split the profit 50/50. It was crazy. It was poetic. It was perfect. I went to the auction. I stood in the back, wearing a tailored suit, looking every bit the successful man Frank said I'd never be. When the property came up, the bidding was sluggish. People knew the story. It was the fraud house. I raised my paddle. Sold. The auctioneer banged the gavel. To the gentleman in the gray suit. I owned it. I owned the walls that had imprisoned me. I owned the driveway where I wasn't allowed to park. I owned the laundry room where my blood had stained the floor. The first thing I did when I got the keys was walk into that laundry room. The hole was still there. I hired a contractor the next day. Tear it all out, I said. Every wall, every floorboard. I want it to look like a completely different house. I visited Frank in jail once, just before the renovation started. He looked 10 years older. He was wearing an orange jumpsuit that clashed horribly with his complexion. He picked up the phone through the glass. He didn't look angry anymore. He looked defeated. I heard you bought the house, he mumbled. I did, I said. Are you going to keep my jukebox? He asked. The $4,000 jukebox he bought instead of fixing my teeth. No, I said. I sold it for scrap. It was broken anyway. Frank flinched. And Austin? He asked. Have you heard from him? He's in a minimum security facility upstate, I said. He's working in the laundry. Ironically, Frank sighed. Jack, don't, I said. Don't apologize. It doesn't change anything. You didn't love me, Dad. You just wanted to own me. And now, I own you. Or at least, I own everything you used to have. I hung up the phone. I didn't feel the need to stay. I walked out of the prison and into the bright sunlight. I got into my car. Not a Porsche, but a very nice, brand new Mercedes I had leased with my own, clean credit. I drove back to the house. The construction crew was throwing debris into a dumpster. I watched as they tossed out the old kitchen table, the one where I had been told there was no college fund. It was just wood. It was just stuff. I realized then that the collapse wasn't just about their money. It was about the collapse of their lie. The lie that they were the powerful ones. The lie that I was weak. They were in cages of their own making. I was free. I took a sledgehammer from one of the workers. You want to take a swing, boss? He asked. I looked at the wall where the living room met the hallway. Yeah, I said. I think I do. I swung the hammer. It smashed through the plaster and lath with a satisfying crunch. Dust filled the air. Sunlight streamed through the new opening. It was time to build something new. The renovation of the Miller house wasn't just construction. It was an exorcism. For the first week, I was there every day, swinging a sledgehammer alongside the crew. There is something profoundly healing about physically destroying the architecture of your trauma. We tore down the drywall where Frank had smashed my head. We ripped up the carpet where I had slept on a thin mattress for years. We gutted the kitchen where I was told there was no money for my education while they booked trips to Paris. As we peeled back the layers of the house, we found the physical manifestation of their rot. Behind the pristine wallpaper in the master bedroom, there was black mold. The foundation had a crack that had been painted over rather than fixed. It was the perfect metaphor for Frank and Martha. A shiny, respectable exterior hiding structural decay and toxicity. One afternoon, while clearing out the attic, I found a shoebox tucked behind a loose insulation panel. It was labeled Jack's Future. My heart skipped a beat. Had I been wrong? Had they actually saved something for me? I opened it. Inside, there wasn't cash or bonds. It was empty, except for a stack of receipts. Receipts for Frank's gambling losses. Receipts for Martha's designer handbags. And a single, crumpled letter from a collection agency dated 5 years ago, warning them about the foreclosure risks if they didn't stop borrowing against the equity. They had literally used Jack's future as a trash bin for their financial sins. I took the box out to the dumpster in the driveway. I didn't feel angry anymore. Anger requires energy, and I wasn't going to waste another calorie on them. I lit a match and dropped it into the box. I watched the paper burn, the smoke rising into the clear blue sky. It felt like I was finally breathing clean air for the first time in 28 years. While the house was being transformed, the legal hammer finally fell. The sentencing hearing was scheduled for a Tuesday in November. I didn't have to go. Sarah, my lawyer, said I could skip it. But I needed to see it. I needed the closure. I arrived at the courthouse in my new car. I had traded in the sensible Honda. After the initial success of my work with Elena and the projected profits from the house flip, I decided to treat myself. I pulled into the parking lot in a Rolls-Royce Ghost. It was excessive, maybe, but driving that silent, powerful machine felt like reclaiming the dignity they had tried to beat out of me. I sat in the back row of the courtroom. When the bailiff brought them in, the silence was heavy. Frank looked like a ghost. He had lost 30 pounds. His skin was sallow, and that arrogant, chest-puffed posture was gone. He walked with a shuffle. Martha looked disheveled, her roots showing gray, her eyes darting around the room looking for sympathy that wasn't there. And Austin, the golden child, he looked terrified. He was shaking, chewing his fingernails down to the quick. He wasn't wearing designer streetwear anymore. He was in a prison-issued jumpsuit that hung loosely on his frame. The prosecutor didn't hold back. He painted a picture of a family that preyed on their own son. He detailed the identity theft, the fraud, the hit-and-run cover-up. He brought up the victim of Austin's accident, a young father who still walked with a cane. When it was Frank's turn to speak, he tried to play the devoted father card one last time. "Your Honor," Frank said, his voice cracking, "I did what I thought was best for the family. We were drowning. I just wanted to save my boys." The judge, a stern woman with zero tolerance for nonsense, lowered her glasses. "Mr. Miller, you didn't save your boys. You sacrificed one to enable the other. You stole the identity of your son, the one who was working honest jobs to support you, to fund a lifestyle you couldn't afford, and to cover up the crimes of a son you refused to discipline. That is not parenting. That is predation." She hammered the gavel. Frank Miller, sentenced to 12 years in federal prison for grand larceny, wire fraud, and identity theft. Martha Miller, sentenced to 5 years for conspiracy and fraud. Austin Miller, sentenced to 4 years for reckless endangerment, obstruction of justice, and probation violation. As the bailiffs moved in to cuff them, Frank turned around. He scanned the gallery. His eyes locked onto mine. He saw the tailored suit. He saw the calmness in my face. He opened his mouth to say something, maybe to beg, maybe to curse me. I didn't look away. I just nodded once. A final acknowledgement. Goodbye. Martha started wailing as they led her out. Austin was crying silently. Frank hung his head. I walked out of the courthouse. The air was crisp. I got into my Rolls-Royce, the leather soft against my back. I turned on the engine, a whisper of power, and drove back to the construction site. We finished the house 3 months later. It was unrecognizable. We had knocked down walls to create an open concept. The dark, oppressive hallways were gone, replaced by light oak floors and floor-to-ceiling windows. The kitchen was a chef's dream. The laundry room, my former torture chamber, was now a bright, functional mudroom with a skylight. We listed it on a Friday. By Sunday, we had a bidding war. Because of the location and the high-end renovation, the house sold for $850,000. After paying off the bank lien, which I had acquired at a discount, the renovation costs and Elena's share, I walked away with a net profit of nearly $300,000. I stood in the empty living room one last time before handing over the keys to the new owners. A young couple expecting their first child. They were holding hands, looking at the house with dreams in their eyes. "It has such good energy," the wife said to me. "It feels light." I smiled. "We made sure of that. We cleared out all the old shadows." I handed them the keys. "Be happy here. Make new memories." As I walked down the driveway, I stopped at the mailbox. There was a letter inside, forwarded from the prison. It was from Frank. I held the envelope in my hand. I could feel the weight of it. I knew what was inside. Excuses, guilt trips, requests for money for the commissary. I walked over to the garbage can at the curb. I didn't open it. I dropped the letter into the trash. I got into my car and drove away. I didn't look in the rearview mirror. There was nothing behind me worth looking at. 2 years have passed since the day the gavel fell. My life today would be unrecognizable to the Jack of 3 years ago. I didn't just stop at flipping my parents' house. That project ignited something in me. With the profit I made, and with Elena as my business partner, I started a boutique real estate development firm. We specialize in taking distressed properties, hoarder houses, foreclosures, places with bad bones, and turning them into sanctuaries. I have a knack for seeing the potential in broken things. Maybe because I had to find the potential in myself when I was at my most broken. I live in the city now, in a penthouse overlooking the harbor. It's my space. I bought it with my own money, signed with my own clean credit. There is no white furniture that I'm afraid to sit on. There are no rooms I'm not allowed to enter. Tonight is Thanksgiving. In the old days, Thanksgiving was a minefield. I would spend the day cooking while Austin watched football. Frank would criticize the turkey, and Martha would make passive-aggressive comments about my job or my car. Tonight, my penthouse is full of people. Elena is here, carving the turkey with the surgical precision of a CEO. Sarah Gold, my shark of a lawyer, is here, laughing over a glass of wine. Sam, the friend who let me sleep on his couch when I had nothing, is here with his new fiancée. Marcus, the landlord who tipped me off to the credit score disaster, is managing the playlist. This is my family, my chosen family. There isn't a drop of shared blood between us, but there is more loyalty in this room than I ever experienced in 28 years with the Millers. We sat down to eat. The table was groaning under the weight of the food. Nobody was yelling. Nobody was walking on eggshells. "A toast," Elena said, raising her glass. The room went quiet. "To Jack," she said, looking at me with that same intensity she had during our first interview. "For reminding us that your past does not dictate your future. And for making the best damn cranberry sauce I've ever tasted." Everyone laughed and clinked glasses. "To Jack." I took a sip of wine. Tasted like freedom. Later that evening, after everyone had left and the dishwasher was humming quietly, I went out onto the balcony. The city lights were twinkling below me like diamonds. I thought about Austin. He gets out in 2 years. I heard through the grapevine that he's struggling inside. He doesn't have his parents to protect him, and he doesn't have the skills to survive. He's learning the hard way that the world doesn't care if you were the golden child. I thought about Frank. He'll be nearly 70 when he gets out. He'll have no house, no savings, no reputation, and no family. He will die alone. And the tragedy is, he built his own lonely cage, brick by brick. For a long time, I wondered if I should forgive them. People always tell you that forgiveness is for you, not for them. They say you need to forgive to heal. But I realized that forgiveness isn't always the goal. Indifference is. I don't hate them anymore. I don't wish them pain. I just don't think about them. They are like characters in a book I finished reading a long time ago. A sad, dark book that I put back on the shelf and never planned to open again. I looked at my reflection in the glass door. The scar on my lip from where Frank pushed me into the wall is barely visible now, just a tiny white line. It's not a mark of shame. It's a reminder. It reminds me that I survived. It reminds me that I walked away. My phone buzzed. It was a notification from my bank app. My credit score had just updated. 810. Perfect score. I smiled. I remember the words Frank screamed at me that rainy morning. His future matters. Yours never did. He was wrong. My future mattered more than he could ever comprehend. Because my future was the one thing he couldn't steal, couldn't spend, and couldn't destroy. I own my name. I own my life. And for the first time in history, the Miller legacy isn't one of abuse and lies. It's one of resilience. I turned off the lights on the balcony and walked back into my warm, quiet, peaceful home. Friends, I shared this story not just to vent or to entertain you with a justice drama, but because I know I am not alone. There is a dangerous myth in our society that family is everything, and that you must stick by your blood no matter how toxic they are. My story is proof that this is a lie. Narcissistic financial abuse is real. It's when someone uses money, debt, and access to resources to control you, to clip your wings so you can never fly away. My parents didn't just want my money. They wanted my dependence. They wanted me broken so I would always be there to serve them. Here is the lesson I want you to take into your heart. You are not a utility. You are not an appliance for your family to use. You are not an extension of your parents' ego. If you are in a situation where your loyalty is being exploited, where your boundaries are violated, and where your future is being sacrificed for someone else's comfort, you have the right to walk away. It will be scary. It might be lonely at first, but the peace you will find on the other side is worth every struggle. Biology makes relatives. Love, respect, and safety make family. Don't ever let anyone convince you that you owe them your life just because they gave you birth. I want to hear from you. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever had to set a hard boundary with a family member to save yourself, I want to know one thing. What was the moment you realized enough is enough? Share your moment in the comments. Let's create a space where we support each other's bravery. And if you learned something from my journey, or if you just enjoyed seeing justice served, simply comment the word good below. Seeing that one word tells me that sharing my trauma was worth it because it helped you. Thank you for listening. Keep fighting for your future. It matters.